It's been 5 years since we've seen what can just barely be described as a teaser trailer for The Elder Scrolls 6. The drums are beating, the camera is rapidly panning across the landscape, the horns are blaring the melody synonymous with the series. When the camera lifts, we see a rocky mountainous landscape with a relatively large waterfront connected to it. Then, all we're left with is a simple title reveal showing the words, The Elder Scrolls 6. Since then, we've had no updates, news, or information at all with regards to the game's development. This has left so many fans theorizing about the larger and finer details of the plot. For today's discussion, I'd like to throw my hat in the ring with several personal hypotheses and ideas for what I'd like to see in The Elder Scrolls 6. A lot of the ideas going to be shared today should be considered as more subjective desires as opposed to objective analytical desires. Basically, what I think would be really interesting to see in the game as opposed to what others have theorized is likely going to be in the game, although they do pretty much go hand in hand together. Let's build the idea of The Elder Scrolls 6 using the 5 W's, starting off with the much debated question of what. Perhaps an odd place to start, but by answering what is going on during the events of The Elder Scrolls 6, I might be able to set the overall tone for the rest of the questions. Likely similar to many other fans out there, I really want to see the tensions between the Altmerry Dominion, aka the Thalmor, and the Empire turn into another war. When playing Skyrim for the first time, I was honestly more intrigued by the Thalmor, Imperial Legion, and Stormcloak arc than I was with the Alduin the World Eater arc. It felt like the game teased us with the limited interactions we got to experience with the Thalmor, and honestly, I believe that sets it up perfectly for the next game to center around them, as I know I was left with wanting more. This time though, the player gets to participate in the Second Great War and plays a major part in determining the outcome. And this is the war that topples the Empire and sees the Third Empire come to an end, ultimately creating turmoil and civil unrest amongst all 9 provinces, essentially undoing the work of Tiber's Septim. It should go without mentioning, but in this scenario, the Altmerry Dominion, the Thalmor, are the antagonists. The interesting part though is that it really isn't commonplace within the games for predetermining the hero's political views. Furthermore, it's unlikely, but not impossible, that Bethesda would develop 2 different storylines for the player to embark on. So, this is where a higher power of some form should be brought in to demonstrate the Thalmor's ill intentions. Whether this is a member of the Aedra, the Daedra, or an entirely other being we have not seen or heard of before is left up to interpretation. The next question to follow is when. When would this game take place? Well, it's only fitting that it obviously takes place after the events of Skyrim. In Skyrim, we see the Thalmor and Empire still working together, although it's clear that it isn't on the best of terms. I believe that The Elder Scrolls 6 should take place at least 10 years after The Elder Scrolls 5, but no more than 20 years later. For me personally, I believe the 10 to 20 year range will help out with the immersion and realism between the 2 parties with respects to the rising conflicts and tensions resulting in another, greater, and deadlier war. This would make the game take place 36 or so years after the White Gold Concordat was originally signed. More important of a question though, is when during the war would it take place? Many other fans speculate it should take place during the end of the Second Great War, as that is when the actions of the player will dictate the outcome and results of said war. I do agree with this notion, I just hope that how we got to that point is explained really well, either through a prologue or game introduction. The next question to answer is where. Many believe the next installment's playable province is going to be Hammerfell. I'm really intrigued by the idea of it being there due to its vast history and politics, beautiful layout of cities and landscapes, but most importantly, its relationship with the Altmerry Dominion. In Skyrim, we hear of a similar tale to the Northern Province's civil war, but this one saw the likes of the Thalmor forcefully removed from the Western Province. Personally, I think I would like the game to take place in a province that hasn't been featured before in any of the 5 previous installments. I would also really enjoy the idea of the province having a connection to the Altmerry Dominion and the Thalmor. So, Hammerfell, technically featured in Daggerfall, would certainly be a great province for the game to take place in. Another one, and my personal favorite, would be the Somerset Isles. The Somerset Isles are home to the Altmer and more importantly is the hub and centralized area that features the Thalmor and the Dominion. The next question to ask is why? Why would all this happen? This can simply be answered by recounting the Great War that took place between the Thalmor and the Empire. In short, during the Fourth Era, year 49, a union was established between races of Mer that sought to see elves as the dominant race of Tamriel once again, as was once the case during the Merethic era. This saw challenges and conflicts rising between them and the Empire, who was unwilling to relinquish its power and unity from those areas and its people. Thus, in the Fourth Era, year 171, the Great War began, which saw large-scale battles taking place in Hammerfell and Cyrodiil. The war lasted 4 years and almost ended with the Thalmor victorious, as Emperor Titus Mede II made a tactical withdrawal from the imperial city, allowing the Thalmor to claim it as their own. In one last stand, the Empire struck at the Thalmor, which ended in cataclysmic losses for both sides. No one was crowned victorious as the fighting could not continue from the Empire nor the Thalmor. This is when the White Gold Concordat was drafted and agreed upon by both sides, though it was less than favorable to the Empire. One of the more tactically placed rules from the Concordat was the banning of Talos worship, which is one of the main points that leads to the Civil War in Skyrim. To solidly answer the question of why, it is simply to see the Thalmor as the new rulers and monarchs of the 9 provinces, and the race of men and those deemed unworthy ultimately made into slaves and lesser beings, or worse, killed. The final question for today is who? Who is the player going to be? Are they some reincarnation of a divine entity? Are they someone with the body of a mortal, yet the soul of a powerful being? Are they a random prisoner who gets caught at the wrong time and wrong place? To be honest with you, I don't mind any of these answers, so long as it is well written into the story. I would much rather a trope that we've seen before within the series that's well integrated into the story than a brand new concept that really doesn't make much sense with regards to the storytelling and lore of the universe. Some final ideas before the video ends of extra additions I'd like to see within the game would be to include some breakthrough on the current state of the Dwemer. What happened to the Dwemer is a discussion point that has long been theorized, and while I don't need it to be completely answered within this game, perhaps just some form of a clue or information provided would stir up even more discussion and help steer fans in the right direction. Given Talos is a major point of controversy between Mer and Men, it would be really intriguing to see him play a bigger role within the overall story. Perhaps with some form of an avatar or a spiritual entity seen in one of the bigger battles, or in a ritual of some sorts. Either way, it would be extremely satisfying to see the Thalmor humbled by an extension of Talos during the game. Finally, last but not least, it would be really cool for Bethesda to bring back the leveled hand-to-hand skill, as that was my favorite form of fighting within the games. Overall, those were some thoughts and opinions of mine regarding the Elder Scrolls 6 and what I would hope to see mixed with a little bit of what we deserve to see. If only one idea from this video was presented in the game, all I can ask for is that we see more on the Thalmor and what their ultimate plans are for Tamriel.